Our verdicts on 3 of this Christmas's hottest smartphones.
For me, Christmas morning is about getting all the family together, big roaring fire, lovely big tree, you know, and hoping that you got a flagship smartphone.
The best way for Jason and I to test the flagship smartphone models was to live with them.
So we are currently on top of the O2.
We took them everywhere we went and used as many functions and features as we could.
Yeah, I hear you.
In what we would our everyday lives.
Our first choice was the HTC One X Plus, with a 4.7-inch screen and weighing in at 130 grams.
Next to the iPhone 5, with a 4-inch widescreen display, is the lightweight 112 grams.
And third, the Nokia Lumia 920, with a 4.5-inch screen and weighing in at a rather heavy 185 grams.
First one I took out the box, loved the design, is the Nokia Lumia 920. Didn't like the weight. I could feel my muscles having to work, which, when you hold it on a smartphone, I don't think should be the case.
It's absolutely the heaviest of the 3, and I agree, it could be a real problem for people.
Yeah, iPhone 5. This, a little bit taller, slimmer, but for me, it just looks almost the same as the iPhone 4, iPhone 4S.
From a design perspective, they've not been adventurous enough for me. They need to make more of an effort.
The HTC One X Plus. I can't get excited about this.
May I say, I think it might be a girl thing.
Okay.
I think this is a very masculine phone.
Yeah.
Yeah? And I think maybe they've got that wrong, because if you're not relating to it, then there's a whole market they might be missing. But I love this phone. For me, it's a sexy Lamborghini.
We thought all 3 screen displays were equally superb, but it was a different story with the cameras. We picked out a really useful feature on the Nokia.
One of the things that this is supposed to be really good at, the Nokia 920, is low light
Low
stuff.
light,
Yeah.
because it's got the dual LED, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I took a lot of low light picture of this. This is a light bulb, which is really good to test contrast. And actually, look at the clarity of that image. I think it's an exceptionally good image.
The HTC camera was absolutely fine, but the iPhone stood out for all the wrong reasons.
Out of all the 3 cameras, all the 3 videos, this one has the most bland of colouring. When I look at the photographs, they just don't stand out. I don't feel like there's any real life in the pictures.
So what about the beating hearts of these devices? Well, the HTC One X Plus has a quad-core processor that really delivers.
You're getting almost, I mean, this maybe is a slight exaggeration, but almost, you know, current generation console graphics on it. I mean, it is extraordinary. It is a beast. It's a Ferrari with another engine just bolted onto the front. It really is a quick phone.
And while the performance of the iPhone left us both pretty cold, I loved the Nokia.
I think it, and it does it. This feels like it's part of me. It's the tile system. It's just big, it's easy. Big icons, great big colours. You cannot go wrong.
The iPhone, for me, is kind of doing what the iPhone 4 did, in fact, what the iPhone 3 did.
Yeah.
It's just doing it slightly quicker.
But with all that processing, how do the batteries stand up?
Out of the 3, without a doubt, I found that the HTC lasted a lot longer.
13 minutes past 10, and that's the only battery life that has depleted.
The real story, I think, is how bad the iPhone 5's battery is.
That doesn't even begin to cover it.
Battery's dead by 3 p.m.
That means you have to carry your charger around.
Unbelievable.
How much of a hassle.
And while the iPhone seems to have stood still, Nokia's innovations are charging ahead.
And what about the wireless inductive charging on the Nokia? That's a genius idea.
That's absolutely fantastic.
And it matches in colour.
It matches, they're both red.
Yay!
Brilliant.
Finally, we've been testing all of our phones for call quality.
I can actually hear you very clearly. You're very loud in my ear on the HTC.
And discovered a potential design flaw with the Nokia.
There's a sweet spot on this phone. I'll try and get that light on it about there. And it's like a little slit of a speaker. And actually, it means if I get the wrong position on my ear, I actually lose you.
iPhone, where do I even start with that? Absolute nightmare. Every single phone call that I made with that, I have issues with the other person on the other end going, are you still there? Sounds like I'm doing that with my phone.
Really?
Every single person I speak to has said that.
It's quite a statement.
Every phone call.
So, time for our crucial G ratings. The iPhone 5 gets just 3 Gs. No innovation. The battery life is terrible. It's too expensive and the build quality is poor.
The HTC wins 4 Gs, nearly 5. Its processor is super powerful, and the only thing that holds it back from a full score is, oddly, it's not 4G ready.
And the Nokia also snaps 4 Gs, nearly 5. The user experience and wireless charger are ace, but it lacks apps and it's a bit too heavy. So, we'd already lined up more tinsel tech than you can throw a snowball at, but there was for us. And that bloke.
There he goes, look at that.
But we weren't here for a Christmas jolly. We'd brought along 3 high-end smart TVs to test. We'd set them up so we'd sit with our backs to the entertainers, meaning we could only judge the movement, contrast and tiny details like skin tone from the screens.
They are impressive, aren't they?
Smart TVs are big business this Christmas, so we want to help you find the very best 3D smart TV for your festive living room.
And to do that, we fed the live action directly into our television sets. And for our first test, we started with colour and contrast.
Well done! All of the TVs are 55 inches, and the first one was the Panasonic P55 VT50. This one is a plasma. It's the only plasma out of the 3 televisions.
It boasts a 6:1 contrast ratio. That should have our very own ringmaster Norman Barrett MBE and his performing budgies jumping out of the screen.
Initial thoughts?
I think the colours are actually quite deep and quite rich.
For me, the tints, tones and shades are not as clearly defined on the Panasonic as I would like. There are subtleties in the hues of those blue birds, which are clearer, from my perspective at least, on the Sony.
Sony's Smart 3D TV is feature-rich and the cheapest of the bunch.
The Sony gives a great contrast between light and dark. So the white table with a black background is really sharp and a very true red around the edging.
I absolutely agree. I think the contrast of the Sony is one of its biggest selling points. It's like chalk on a blackboard. It's really, really clear.
And the final TV was the Samsung UE55 ES8000 series, and again, active 3D.
We wanted to see how the Samsung would handle vibrant colours.
Everything's got this brightness to it. It's actually, it's quite harsh on the eye.
Sure, the Samsung's a bit lurid, it's a bit too much saturation, but I really like it. I think it does that really well, a kind of hyper-reality. With movies and video games, which of course are something that I use television for a lot, you know, I want a TV that can really pop out at me. Bravo!
Well, bravo!
So on to our second challenge, comparing how the TVs handle motion.
Nice!
And we couldn't think of a better way to test them than a very hot Jack Sparrow lookalike.
Here we go.
Got a little bit of a hot spring.
Yeah, I feel that.
Real clarity on the Panasonic. The fire, the flame, the colours of the flame as well. But as soon as it started moving, you could actually see the flames moving. It didn't just blur into the background and just become a bit of a mess. The Panasonic, being a plasma and having a 2,500 hertz refresh rate, means that the picture refreshes a lot quicker during movement. The motion on the Sony was actually quite shocking. No contrast between the flame and the colours and the dark background. It all blended into the curtains behind as soon as it started moving. The Samsung's motion was very good. If I were to say it was comparable to any other television, I would say it was the Panasonic, but the Panasonic just pipped it to the post.
I have to agree with you. I think ultimately, in terms of pure motion, the Panasonic just gets it.
Next, we donned our 3D glasses to find out which high-end smart TV would be our festive winner, with a little help from some Kenyan acrobats.
Hey! Woohoo!
First up, the Panasonic.
I mean, I've got to say, from the outset, it does feel like it's got some geography to the image. Put it this way, if this was your only experience of 3D, you'd probably invite the neighbours round to say, have a goggle at that, wouldn't you?
Next up, the underperforming Sony. But could it sparkle in 3D?
There's a little bit of motion blur.
Yeah, and it's not as crisp.
It's not. And the clarity between sections of the image, the depth, isn't quite as impressive. I wouldn't be inviting the neighbours round to watch that one. No. I'd sort of be quietly a little bit disappointed.
The Samsung had been a solid performer so far, but would it give us the 3D wow factor?
OK, so straight away, on the Samsung, it's a lot more dynamic, it's a lot more structural.
Yeah.
Now I can see a depth to it.
And look at the lights as well. They are popping out. They have that real 3D.
They do. It is a very physical image, isn't it?
The Samsung 3D was a great experience.
The final decider would be which of these smart TVs would be the smartest.
The 3 TVs that we were looking at are smart TVs, which means that they've got a computer brain and they can connect to the internet. All of these 3 do it wirelessly via Wi-Fi. All of them share things like BBC iPlayer and YouTube and some social networking apps. The Samsung Smart TV does sit in its own class, though, because the way that you interact with it is also much more sophisticated than the Sony and the Panasonic. So it uses voice and gesture control. So you wave at it and you can change functions on the television. You know, you say channel up and you'll change the channel, television on, web browser, and the web browser will come up. There is one much smarter smart TV, and it's the Samsung.
So on to the G ratings, and it's a disappointing 3 Gs for the Sony Smart TV. It displayed a depth of contrast with vibrant colours, but its motion and 3D capabilities were just left wanting.
The Panasonic gets 4 Gs and was Polly's personal favourite. We loved the way it handled motion, but it didn't quite live up to its impressive tech specs. Then there's the price tag.
And it's 5 Gs for the Samsung. It was Jason's favourite, and although its motion wasn't perfect, it was an impressive all-round performer, with its innovative smart TV features giving it the edge. It's that Christmas must-have TV.
Gary and Jeff Daniels over there next as Dumb and Dumber.